Buenas a todos, chavales. Pero, ¿juegues más? El Inside de Star Citizen. En este caso se titula eh, Armas de tu elección, ¿no? Weapons of Choice.
So it might seem a little bit weird that we refer to these items as weapons. FPS weapons aren't always used to kill people. We just call them that internally as they go through the same pipeline, but there are so many other things that you can do with them. Say you might want to take down a target without actually killing them and restraining them instead and taking them in. Or you
Dice que nos referimos a nivel interno como armas FPS, pero no necesariamente tienen por qué ser armas. Pueden simplemente servir para reducir a un enemigo o hacer una variedad de cosas diferentes, ¿no?
You might want some form of gadget that picks things up, or you might want another that disables electricals, or you might want another that cuts, another that salvages, another that repairs. So there are
Reparaciones, deshabilitar eléctricos o agarrar cosas, ¿no? Hay un montón de
many things
chatarra.
that you can do with FPS weapons. So I've personally wanted to work on these non-lethal FPS weapons and tools for a long time. I've personally written a lot of the design documentation that goes alongside them for like a long time ago, so I've been dying for these things to come out, and I've seen a couple of them going through the concept phases, and
Dice que él está realmente especialmente entusiasmado por el hecho de trabajar en estas armas no letales y que hizo gran parte de la argumentación de las armas y que estaba muriéndose de ganas de que saliesen.
I'm sat there itching, waiting for it to come in, and I'm looking at the roadmap myself, but ultimately there's not much point in us putting these things out without the underlying.
Ah, mirad lo que aparecía en la preview, o sea que esto es el Tractor Beam, pero es un Tractor Beam más potente, ¿no? Y además que dice que el desarrollador que estaba mirando ahí en el roadmap con ganas de que, bueno, pues con ganas de poder sacar las cosas.
Systems being there. Now, all that said, teams have now started work on systems like medical, charge and drain, breaching, salvage. So now is a perfect time to start developing these weapons and tools to go alongside the systems.
Claro, dice que el equipo está trabajando vemos ahí roturas de puertas, otras herramientas, que es un buen momento para estar trabajando, porque el equipo está trabajando en otros sistemas, ¿no? De abrir puertas y demás, otras historias, y el tema de minería y tal, de los artilugios de minería, pues, para trabajar también en este tipo de objetos.
A change to the player health system is that over time, you may start to suffer long-lasting injuries if you've been seriously injured multiple times. And what the multi-tool healing tool allows you to do is not only heal someone just by firing at them over a short distance and applying healing gel, you will also get a UI readout that does notify you of any long-lasting injuries that might not be obvious that your target has sustained, and you can advise them or use multiple healing or drug pens to top them back up again.
Dice que el tema de que a través de esta herramienta, si una persona ha sufrido heridas varias veces, pues que eso se irá acumulando y que con esta herramienta también vamos a poder ver el estado de los jugadores de cosas que puede que a simple vista no se perciban e informarlos, ¿no?
You know, it's a modular piece, so how do you look at it and instantly recognize it as, okay, this is a medical attachment? So obviously you've got the essentially what looks like a sort of syringe, and then also you've got there's a canister on this that swaps out, and that also holds the sort of healing serum. So those are the two things that swap out on this.
Dice que tenemos el arma y en el arma aquí, vamos a ver un momentito. Aquí vamos a ver que tendríamos aquí un suero de curar, un suero que curase, ¿no? Y que esto pues como que se puede ir reemplazando, se puede ir recargando, ¿no?
So those are the two things that swap out on this.
So the multi-tool salvage attachment also has two functions. It has salvage and repair. Salvaging allows you to do what we call hull stripping, which is where you can walk up to a ship or vehicle and you can start stripping away the hull that then gets.
Dice que la multitud de salvage, de salvamento, tendría la función tanto de reparar como de chatarrear algo, ¿no? y con una de las funciones que sería, que le llaman hull stripping, que es despedazar el casco de la nave. O sea, sacar partes de lo que es la cobertura del casco de la nave, ¿no?
In a canister, and that could either be sold on or kept for repair. And what repair is essentially the reverse. If you look at your ship that's been damaged, you can apply what is in the canister, the material that you've gathered in the canister, to any damage that's been done to your ship or vehicle to repair it.
Claro, lo que puedes, dentro de lo que es el... Parece que hay como una especie de eh, espacio para guardar un material que nos serviría para poder reparar. Y si tenemos algo jodido, ¿no? Pues podríamos utilizar ese material que está dentro del artilugio para poder reparar una sección del casco de la nave.
And the obvious visual thing with this is Nick delivered it in yellow originally, but we've pushed him to more the silvery blue. If you find one or you're in a shop, you're like, okay, that's what I need. Pick. There's no confusion.
Dice que además han cambiado los colores para que dice que si estás en una tienda, que dice, ok, eso es lo que necesito, porque por identificándolo por colores que sabemos de qué artilugio se trata, ¿no?
So we are also working on the dedicated medical gun, and it essentially gives you all of the information that the multi-tool version provides. It does give you additional functionality like being able to apply specific drugs if you want to. Now that you've got the readout that lets you know what's wrong with someone, you'll be able to look at what you've got in there. You can kind of move the sliders around and apply them at different levels and different amounts of drugs and medicine to match.
Dice que la diferencia entre esta herramienta y la multitool demostraría información igual que la multitool del estado, pero tendría funciones extra como poder aplicar diversas drogas y poder ajustar las cantidades de esas diversas drogas que queremos aplicar.
Ask those issues, which is really going to contribute towards pushing that medical role in the PU.
It was the first one that we've done like this. Overall, like, I mean, I actually really like how this instrument turned out. It reads well. It feels high tech. We've got some really good color options as well, so yeah, pretty cool.
Parece que cuando hicieron, ¡guau, qué guapo! Cuando hicieron la pistola médica, que están bastante contentos en el resultado porque tiene pinta de ser alta tecnología y tienen diversas gamas de colores para los colores que están utilizándose, pues que se ven geniales, ¿no?
Well, so yeah, pretty cool. So the Grey Cat tractor beam. This was a real fun one.
It's much bigger than the multi-tool. It only does one thing.
And so we had a lot of iterations, but where we ended up was really cool, and it was also gave us a really good chance of advancing the style of Grey Cat. So it's sort of an updated chassis. It's really pushing on those tool vibes.
Está diciendo que este arma les da la oportunidad de poder expandir o explorar un poco más el estilo de Grey Cat, pues haciendo toda esta cubierta que tiene y acercándose más a esa o potenciando esa vibra de herramienta, ¿no? De que dé una sensación de que es una herramienta.
And it also, it also fits nicely onto the back of the player.
So it's graded.
Y dice que también se ve genial en la espalda del jugador, ¿no?
For lifting much heavier objects. It's got a much bigger battery, so you'll be able to use it for longer. And we're exploring other options like it being able to push pull faster and being able to grapple from a further distance away and grapple you faster as well.
Están diciendo de que tiene una batería más grande y están investigando las opciones de que puedas mover los objetos más rápido y a una distancia mayor.
So another thing we've been developing.
Con moverlos, empujarlos y tirar de ellos, ¿no? Sabéis cómo funciona la tool ahora. Con la ruedita de radón los acercáis o los alejáis.
Is the standalone cutting tool, which is the bigger, badder, better version of the multi-tool cutter.
Right away, you can see that family DNA that's shared between the two. So this one kind of feels a slightly older generation.
It'll be able to cut through materials quicker. It'll be able to cut through denser material. And it will be able to essentially do it all faster with a bigger battery capacity, so you can keep going for longer.
Estamos viendo que esto sería la versión, bueno, que están diciendo que se ve claramente el estilo de Grey Cat y que sería un cortador y que podría hacer no solo corte a mayor velocidad y con una mayor capacidad de batería, también cortes a materiales de una mayor densidad.
It's a mix of precision, precision tech, you know, because a lot of the stuff that these tools do is quite technical.
So when you're cutting out those big shapes on panels and everything, it'll be the tool that you want to use instead of the mini multi-tool itself.
Cuando estés cortando grandes paneles o sea, grandes formas de paneles, grandes masas de paneles, esta va a ser la herramienta que quieras utilizar en vez de la multi chiquitita.
So the breaching charge is one of the first examples we've got of an FPS deployable.
So with this one, it, you know, it remains quite small, but benefit is you can stick it onto a surface.
So you'll be able to take this out, put it down, it'll deploy on the surface, and the breaching charge is purely meant to bust through doors.
And it's pulling on some of the bearing styling that we did for things like the grenade and some of the more recent weapons, maybe like the...
Dice que este dispositivo sería una carga que se pondría en las puertas para poder hacer un boquetote en la puerta y que es el primer desplegable que tienen de FPS. Acordaos que también, esto no lo están diciendo aquí, pero había planteado un escudo también, energía para poner en el suelo, y que dice que aquí podemos comprobar cómo hay ese estilo recogido de bearing comparándolo con una de las armas de bearing.
The LMG, so we're getting more of that polymer. Yeah, it's just always sort of maintaining that balance of polymer versus metal versus how many bolts.
Está diciendo mantener esa armonía de polímero, metales y cuántos tornillos hay que poner para tener esa esencia de bearing.
Again, keep that family DNA.
So something that doesn't necessarily link in, but I am very excited to talk about, is the Utaflex Crossbow.
The Utaflex Crossbow probably is one of my favorite weapons in a long time, actually.
Dice que probablemente es una de mis armas favoritas en mucho tiempo.
It's very different to any weapon that we've ever done before.
Fijaros la cara que se les pone a la hora de hablar de la Crossbow, ¿no?
And also it's essentially a new
ballesta.
company.
It's going to be our best stealth weapon available. So while the radar and scanning systems pick up on IR, EM, and audio as well, this thing will essentially fly under the radar and all of those. So it's your weapon that you will be using if you want to stay stealthy.
Dice que es un arma que si quieres dispararla o demás no tiene ningún tipo de emisión ni de sonido, que es la mejor arma de juego sigiloso que tienen, y si quieres ir a jugar sigiloso es el arma a utilizar.
And it just looks so cool.
Y simplemente
This
se ve increíble.
design, yeah, I really love it, and the fact that Nick has been able to figure out how to get all the functionality that's required by design, the key beads, the reloading, it's a cartridge, the arrow has to expand.
Ahí estamos viendo el cartucho y las flechas que acordaros que se extendían y demás.
And once it's loaded, it has to compress to a certain size in terms of the overall length of the weapon. It's got to look badass, and I would say, call me crazy, I think we've nailed it on this. I think the art team did a really awesome job of building it as well.
Está muy guapo. Dice que todos los detalles, el tema del cargador, de cómo funciona, lo que son las flechas que se extraen se expanden y se contraen según estén guardados en el cargador o no, cuando vayan a ser disparadas. Dice que llamarme loco, ¿no? Pero dice el tío, llamarme loco, pero creo que el equipo que lo hemos bordado, ¿no? Que le hemos clavado, que le hemos hecho increíble el arma.
Well,
so those are just a few of the FPS weapons and tools that we've been working on. We are so excited to be working on them now and developing these systems. So I'm sure you'll hear more about how these systems work in the future, and we can't wait to get them in your hands and have you playing with them.
Se están cocinando más cosas y que, aparte de lo que estamos viendo aquí, y que no puede esperar a ver cuando nosotros le podamos echar el guante a esas nuevas cosas en las que estamos trabajando.
As Star Citizen's development pushes into exciting new gameplay aspects like medical, breaching, salvage, shooting people with crossbows, it's exciting to see the weapons content team get to stretch their proverbial legs like this. But up next, asteroids. Friendly space potato or a rocky, dangerous adversary? The planet content team is...
Dice que ahora es el momento de ver los asteroides. patata amigable del espacio o verdaderas rocas.
Created a new pipeline for better looking and more varied asteroids, and they're coming your way in the upcoming Alpha 313.
Espera. Un segundito.
In the upcoming Alpha 313.
Vale, vienen ya en la 3.13.
Rugs are boring, but you still need them for the big picture, and if they don't look good, then the big picture will suffer from it.
Dice que las rocas son aburridas, pero si no tienen buena pinta, el cuadro completo sufrirá porque no tengan buena pinta, ¿no? Las rocas.
I do have a knack for finding solutions to problems, not necessarily only the ones that are very difficult to find, but also for things that are just like inconvenient. The main reason why we needed new asteroids was that the old ones were using and relying on old tech. Based on that, we wanted to update the process and the assets. As the Star Citizen universe keeps on expanding, there is a need for more variety for asteroids.
Qué guapada. Dice que los antiguos asteroides pues que no es suficiente, que a medida que el universo de Star Citizen se expande necesita tener un abanico mayor de variedad.
And that's why we built that new pipeline to allow us to iterate and create more variation much more quickly than before, and with a better quality as well. For that new asteroid workflow, we've moved it all into Houdini, so we generate the high poly version of the asteroid in Houdini, which then gets broken down into a lower resolution version, which gets its unwrap, so you can actually map a texture to it. Then we generate the masks in Houdini as well for our shader in the engine. Then we bake all the information from the high poly onto the low poly, export it out to the engine, and then we set it up there with the shader in the engine, with the tiling textures and the colors and all that stuff.
Dice que lo que hacen es esto en Houdini, en una versión de alto número de polígonos. Luego le hacen un pase de low poly que le llaman, que es, pues una vez tienen la forma detallada, le reducen la cantidad de polígonos, pero tratando de conservar lo que es el aspecto lo mejor posible, y finalmente pues lo meten al motor. Juego, al Lumberyard.
With the new process, the final resulting asteroids are more consistent within a set of asteroids. So you get like a more consistent texel density and detail. It also uses the new organic shader, which has displacement and tessellation, compared to POM, and just the overall quality of the visuals will be improved. We are building a space game after all, so I think asteroids are a vital part of that.
Dice que bueno, que están mejorando lo que es la calidad gráfica de los asteroides en general y el detalle que han conseguido, que está la madre. Y que esto es un juego espacial después de todo, y que los asteroides son una parte vital. O eso piensa él, ¿no?
Getting that experience that you always had when you watched those Star Wars movies as a kid.
Cuando digo o eso piensa él, suena muy mal. Dice o eso es lo que creo, ¿no? En plan, que no es lo mismo que... A ver, se me ha entendido, ¿no? Mierda.
Whether they were hiding behind an asteroid and then someone came by and then you could ambush them and then play hide and seek around the asteroids. And with the new asteroids there are a lot more nooks and crannies, if you will, where the player can hide.
A ver un momentito que no me he enterado bien.
And with the new asteroids there are a lot more nooks and crannies, if you will, where the player can hide.
Parece que tiene como más hoyos o huecos donde te puedas esconder para fomentar ese gameplay, ¿no?
Those are the asteroids that are coming to the Lagrange points in 313, and they might seem like a small thing, but this is Star Citizen, and the details matter.
So what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that new non-lethal FPS weapons with...
Dice que este juego pues es Star Citizen y que los detalles importan, ¿no?
Med beams, tractor beams, cutting beams, and salvage beams are the harbingers of new gameplay opportunities in Star Citizen's future. That the Utaflex Crossbow is Star Citizen's new silent killer. Take that, elevators. That I don't care what it's supposed to be used for, I'm going to use that cutting beam in one-on-one combat because it just looks too darn cool. And that asteroids may seem like a small, tiny thing, but it's the sum total of those small, tiny things that make up for a truly immersive experience that we're all working towards. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. We'll see you all next week.
Espectáculo. Qué espectáculo, chavales. Dice, bueno, finalmente que de los comentarios que hizo Discord al final, que hizo un resumen de lo que está, nos quedamos con... ahora hay otro asesino silencioso, lo dice por el Crossbow. Joder, los elevadores de Green Hex. En fin. Vamos ahí con los chavales y ahí comentamos la jugada. Nos vemos ahora, chicos.